All right, good afternoon, everyone. Come on, good afternoon. Hello. You all were so quiet. We didn't know what was going on here. So, welcome to the first meeting of the General Conference Committee. Don't want to necessarily go through everyone's name at the moment, but certainly want to thank all my colleagues for being here, in particular the speaker. And just to make sure everyone's paying attention, I was just said to the speaker, why don't we just trade statements and see if everyone's going to pay attention when we actually say these things. So it would certainly get everyone's attention for sure. But I am very happy to be here on behalf of the Senate Republican Majority Conference. And I'll just, in particular, thank Leader Stuart Cousins and IDC Leader Jeff Klein for their collegiality, and certainly our colleagues, Senator Young, who's the chair of the Finance Committee, and Senator DeFrancisco, who served with distinction in that capacity and now is our floor leader. So I'll try and keep my remarks as brief as possible. We have a number of people who are going to be speaking, and then we go to the process stuff. But now we're at a juncture where each house has had the opportunity to lay out what they consider to be their priorities and a blueprint for where we should be taking the state. And I know that we all need to work together to get a budget done on time. That's very important to many of our colleagues. They consider that to be an number one priority, and that's good for everyone. Local government, schools, not-for-profits, so everyone can plan. In the Senate, we have done, I think, a number of things. We've come up with a fiscally responsible plan. It is our blueprint, and we stick to some themes that we've had before, staying within a self-imposed state spending cap, but advocating for a number of things, including make the property tax cap permanent. We have advocated for a statutory imposition of a spending cap, so that we are living under the same constraints as our local governments. And in essence, I think we're looking at what are the priorities of our New York families and mirroring that in terms of what our advocacy is. And that's a direct function and correlation to listening to the people we represent, whether they come here to Albany or they see us back at home. So we do have the 2% spending cap. We put in a number of tax proposals, including a 25% reduction in middle income tax rates, making the property tax cap permanent, the 18A surcharge, which is an energy tax that was instituted in 2009 and 2010. That's $125 million that we moved to eliminate this year, which will save ratepayers across the state of New York. And then we also added a limit in the exemption on private pensions, which hasn't been done in a long period of time. That'll save about $360 for 377,000 seniors across the state of New York. And of course, in our commitment in aid to education, having chaired the Senate Education Committee, I'm acutely mindful of what's out there, and I don't think this is going to be a shock to anybody, but our number one priority for our conference is the final and complete elimination of the gap elimination adjustment, which is still $434 million, and by doing so, we build off what the governor started with. And while we may pick apart things in the executive proposal, I am not going to say anything other than what the governor offered is a good start. So we increased spending in education about 7%, $1.6 billion, get rid of the gap elimination adjustment, add $27 million for charter schools and $4.6 million in non-public school aid so that every child has a good chance at a quality education. And a number of our colleagues speak out all the time. Senator Laval has probably been the most outspoken on college affordability. We expand the income eligibility and award amounts to the tuition assistance program, and we increase the tuition tax credit. And we have also, through Senator Roback, Senator Marcelino, and others, been strong advocates for parity on highways, roads, and bridges, and public transit, so that the needs of upstate and downstate and every corner of the state are met through whatever policies we adopt regarding transportation. So parity is extraordinarily important to us. Concur with the governor on $300 million for the Environmental Protection Fund. That's something that a number of our colleagues, both houses, both sides of the aisle, have spoken out very strongly about. And then with regard to quality of life, unfortunately, we're at a juncture where a heroin epidemic is really affecting our state in a number of negative ways. And it doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter what your community's like. It's a systemic problem, and it's growing every day. We fund $167 million for a variety of different programs that we think are going to make a fundamental difference. There's a lot of things that we could be talking about. That is an issue that cuts across party lines and everything else, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can there. And certainly we take the public trust and the integrity of the work that we do In the area of ethics, we still have the strongest disclosure laws in the country, and the Senate has passed legislation regarding pension forfeiture for public officials convicted of a felony, and we have also instituted term limits for legislative leaders in the Senate by House rule and by passing it in a statutory way. So I will close and thank everybody for their indulgence, including all my colleagues here on the dais. And I believe the work that we do is extraordinarily important. How we comport ourselves until now and through the balance of this process speaks volumes about how our government is functioning. I'm confident that we'll have an on-time budget because there are a lot of people, in fact, all people of good faith up here on the dais, and we need to get the public's work done. Speaker.
Thank you, John. So good afternoon. On behalf of the Assembly, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, we are pleased to convene the Joint Budget Conference Committee subcommittees and move into the next phase of our 2016 budget negotiations. At this time, I'd like to introduce the members of the Assembly who are serving on this General Budget Conference Committee. To my left is Assemblymember Herman Denny Farrell, Chair of our Ways and Means Committee, Assemblymember Joe Morelli, our Majority Leader, Assemblymember Earlene Hooper, our Deputy Speaker, Assemblyman Jeff Aubrey, who is our Speaker Pro Temp, Assemblymember Brian Cole, the Minority Leader of the Assembly, and Assemblymember Robert Oakes, the Ranker on Ways and Means. The Assembly is ready to move forward and engage in meaningful and constructive dialogue with our partners in the Senate and the Executive. We're confident through these conversations we can deliver a considerable and on-time budget for New Yorkers. Yesterday, we passed our Assembly spending plan that proposes an all-funds budget of $156.7 billion for the fiscal year 2016 to 17. In this proposal, we answered the calls of thousands of families, workers, and students across this state who are looking for pathways to affordable, quality education, sustainable wages, family protections, and affordable housing. This year, we will fight to tip the scales in favor of the hardworking men and women of the state who are looking for our support to achieve wages that won't leave their fates and the fates of their households in jeopardy. We are committed to delivering a budget that not only raises the minimum wage in New York to $15, and also provide for paid family leave. The Assembly budget acknowledges that across the state, New Yorkers are feeling the pressure of unaffordable child care, housing they cannot afford, and paychecks that are shrinking under an unfair tax burden. Our budget will raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, enact paid family leave, ask the wealthiest New Yorkers to pay a fair share in supporting critical investments in our state, provide a tax break for middle and low-income wage earners, provide $25.4 billion in school aid, which is an increase of $2.13 billion or 9% over 2015-16 school year, earmark $1.7 billion for higher education, and freeze tuition at CUNY and SUNY schools for 2 years. We also reject the executive's proposal to cut $485 million in state support to CUNY because we believe that every student deserves the same access to an affordable education regardless of where they live in New York State. We increase funding for higher education opportunity programs by 20% and enact the DREAM Act. We make a multi-year commitment to prioritize the construction of new supportive housing units to provide the most vulnerable among us with a fighting chance to gain independence. This is part of a larger $2.5 billion affordable housing agenda that will stem the flow of families into homelessness and provide housing opportunities for those across income levels. This is just a snapshot of our proposal. We believe it is a thoughtful and fiscally responsible proposal to invest in our families and workers. We look forward to working out the differences between our fiscal plans and ultimately meeting the needs of the communities we serve.
Thank you, Speaker. I was remiss. I did not properly introduce one of our senior members, Senator Seward, who has served with distinction for a long period of time, chairs our Insurance Committee. And I was also remiss in not properly introducing Senator Liz Krueger, who acts in her capacity as the ranking Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee. Senator Klein.
Thank you very much, Senator Flanagan. I just want to start out by saying this was, I think, one of the most effective one-house budget resolutions that we're able to work on together, and I thank you for that. Back in January, the Independent Democratic Conference put forth a plan that we call a blueprint for a better New York. It really covered all the bases, helping senior citizens, helping our young people get a better education, improvements in housing throughout the state, jobs, and I'm very proud to report that most of our agenda was included in our one-house budget resolution. First, of course, is paid family leave, an increase in the minimum wage, child care tax credits to make sure working people can actually afford child care. We also included another plan, which we call a 50-hour learning week. The 50-hour learning week includes spending money to make sure that 1.8 million young people actually have an after-school program who presently don't in the state of New York. We also have a college affordability plan dealing with the insurmountable debt most of our young people face each and every day in the state of New York. It's now usually about $26,000 on average for a young person graduating in this state in New York. We have a plan to actually deal with that. We also have a senior program. We're creating an assistance program for senior citizens who are at a certain income level and have very high utility and heating costs. We're also creating a program to not only freeze the rents as we did and expand it in New York City under the SCREET program, but we also want to help senior homeowners, again, with higher tax rates, who have co-ops, condos, and homes, again, who may meet a $50,000 income level. So I think all in all, the jobs piece, which I know Senator Valesky has been advocating for very, very hard over the years, creates the first time a manufacturing apprentice program. You know, what we're seeing across our state, especially in upstate New York, is not only our inability to create more jobs, but also prevent the problem of wage stagnation. This apprenticeship program will put workers on a path to prosperity, not only get a job and be trained for a job, but able to continue to get better paying jobs. So I think all in all, we put together a comprehensive plan, and I'm very happy that now we're in a very effective place to advocate for this in the final budget, because most of our plan was accepted. So again, I want to thank Senator Flanagan. I look forward to working with Senator Cousins and both sides of the aisle to make sure we advocate once again for an affordable New York.
Senator Klein, thank you. Next speaker is the Minority Leader of the Senate, Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins.
Thank you, Senator Flanagan, and thank you to Speaker Hasty and Senator Klein, Assemblymember Cole. As I mentioned yesterday, I want to thank the staff on both sides of the aisle in both houses, because I know the lead up to this exercise is extremely busy, and your hard work and dedication is truly appreciated. I also want to thank again my finance ranker, Senator Liz Krueger, for your work on the budget, Liz, and for the advocacy every day for Senate Democratic positions. So it's great to be here in this wide open room. Lights are on, press, and the public is here, but I wish that we were actually discussing and debating the budget. I think everyone knows that this is Sunshine Week, and since it is, I wish all of us in this room would let that be a guide to us and open up this process. Unfortunately, over the years, we've allowed our budget process to be shrouded in mystery and intrigue. But let me get to the substance of the budget, and all I can talk about is the Senate budget, the one house. Our budget resolution, as I said yesterday, is a first step, and while there are some positive things, there are still a lot of negative things and a lot of things left out. I'm glad that we understand the importance of adequately funding our public education system and eliminating GEA this year, and at the same time increasing foundation aid. But we still haven't dealt with CFE, and I wish we had not allowed political games to hurt our CUNY school system. But our Senate budget also misses a crucial opportunity. Our legislature, both houses, both parties, have been rocked by scandal. Yet our Senate resolution does not seriously deal with corruption. Our Senate resolution continues to turn a blind eye to the problems that this institution faces and the mistrust that people have. We need to take concrete steps to restore the trust in our state government, including restricting outside income and closing LLC loopholes. I am glad that our resolution advances a paid family leave proposal, but I do wish it went further. No one in New York should have to choose their jobs over taking care of their loved ones. I'm also disappointed that the Senate did not take steps to help lift millions of people out of poverty and raise the minimum wage. I am glad that the Senate resolution helps lower the tax burden on many New Yorkers, but I wish that it would have been much more targeted and helped more working and middle-class people. I wish that the Senate helped our local municipalities more and increased our AIM funding. I wish we'd gotten serious about our environment and stopped the sweeps from the Reggie Fund, and also not stripped funding from efforts to combat climate change. And I think we saw on the floor of the Senate yesterday, there's a real divide when it comes to this crucial issue. While I agree with some things in the Senate resolution, there are far too many things that were left out. The budget simply doesn't go far enough to help all New Yorkers in the myriad of ways that we can. I wish that this process we are in now had more of an impact and was not just a formal budget requirement. And I hope, frankly, in the upcoming 3 weeks, that wherever the budget negotiation happens, we address these important issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Stewart-Cousins.
We'll now hear from Minority Leader Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I'd like to start off echoing Leader Cousins' commentary about the open budget process. We've been talking about this for some time, and quite frankly, that lies at the shoes of Governor Cuomo, and that's to break the wall of silence. I think it's unconscionable that we're talking about $145 and $150 billion budget, and the minority leaders are left out of those discussions, at least to hear our input and our reaction on the issues that you've heard somewhat today. I don't know what there's to be afraid of. We understand we can count how to vote, and majority vote wins. We get that, but I think that should be in the same dialogue as, the Senate majority, I think, is close to 9 million people that are represented by their representatives. And in our conference, it's between, I think, 5.5 to 6 million people who elected representatives wants to have a voice in terms of providing input as to how we can make the best budget possible for New York. So I'm hoping that Governor Cuomo will immediately open up these private meetings and obviously, as mentioned, Sunshine Week, to have the transparency the state sorely deserves. From an overview, I'm not going to go through all of our reactions to the Assembly Majority's one House resolution yesterday, or from yesterday. That would take me about 4 to 5 hours to recap the debate from yesterday. But I will try to hit some highlights in terms of some points I want to reemphasize through our discussions. First and foremost, we cannot tax and spend our way through the budget process. We must adhere to the same 2% spending cap so that we don't create future state deficits, and it's the same spending cap that we hold our municipalities and school districts to. So that's a starting point. We have not really talked about how can we reduce the cost burden to local municipalities and school districts. And that's unfunded mandates. We've used those magical words for a long time, but we certainly severely lack action that actually reduce costs for everyone in this state, so there is less need to raise taxes or generate more revenue. Certainly some of the points that were made earlier, I'll just reinforce those. When we talk about college tuition, certainly we support increasing aid to SUNY and CUNY, and also to our community colleges in the state. Right now, the governor's proposal, I think, is around $26 million for an increase in base aid to the community colleges. Legislatively and in statute, New York State is supposed to provide 1/3 of tuition support from the state coffers. We are woefully short, because if we did a full third, that would be about $200 million that would go to community colleges alone. So if you really want to reduce tuition and you really want to step up and lower the burden on students in our state, we can, through higher state participation and meeting our statute, I think would be a long way to doing that. Certainly from an infrastructure perspective, to sit here and think about the fact that the 5-year capital plan for the MTA spends nearly $6 billion more than the 5-year plan for upstate DOT. That's just unacceptable, and infrastructure parity has to be a must in the final budget negotiations. And that also includes significant increases to our CHIPS funds across the state. Upstate is on the short end of the stick, has been on the short end of the stick, and I'm not saying that we need to ignore our downstate colleagues. That's not the point. We just need to have parity, and upstate is just as important as downstate, and we should detail that in our budget plans. I know there's going to be a lot of discussion about minimum wage in the coming days and weeks. Certainly, we'll be talking more about that as our conference goes forward as well. Certainly, it's, you know, this idea that minimum wage is a living wage is just not accurate. And when you look at the impact, the financial impact on business, not just businesses, but not-for-profits and healthcare, it's just unconscionable the amount of costs that are going to be increased in this state, and the number of thousands of jobs that will be lost in the not-for-profit sector as well as the for-profit sector. So we need to really have a thorough, factual debate on this issue going forward. Certainly, from the standpoint of regulatory relief, if you talk to any organization that has to deal with a state agency in this state, it doesn't matter who it is, the tax, fine, harass mentality is something that also adds to the burden of organizations that try to operate in the state. We have to do more to remind our state agencies that our customers need to be taken care of, and that they have to make life easier for those people that live and work in the state. And that's something, again, I would call on the Cuomo administration to have a more focused effort on better customer service. Certainly, our conference recently held a series of forums on the heroin epidemic. I mentioned this in my opening remarks at the start of session this year. I too support, and our conference supports, significant resources to address this very, very, very serious problem in our communities. Too many people are suffering and too many people are dying in the state to ignore this problem any longer, and we have to do whatever we can to come up with the resources to tackle this program head on. And it's certainly not last, but one of the things I want to mention is we've been saying for some time that we support full elimination of the GEA, and certainly we have to look at certainly the parity again in terms of school funding. There's a lot of school districts that are suffering in this state, especially as you move into upstate, that school districts are suffering with student populations, the jobs aren't there, people aren't moving upstate to where the need should be, and so an economic development has a big part of that. So we've got a lot to do. We're more than willing to work with our partners in state government, including the governor, but we need, and we will continue to advocate, certainly as we do every single day, but also I think it would be more prudent on behalf of the governor to make sure that we're included in these discussions so we can present firsthand our thoughts on the 5.5 million people that we represent from Buffalo to Long Island. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to take the liberty of speaking with the speaker. We have a number of our colleagues, both from the Assembly and the Senate, who have joined us or are seated out amongst all the people that are here. So we certainly thank them for their attendance and their interest in this process. And I would like to ask Senator Kathy Young to offer a few brief remarks.
Well, thank you very much. And it is great that we are moving this process along. As Majority Leader Flanagan said, we are pushing very hard for an on-time budget. We feel that that is vital to the interests of the people of New York State. At the same time, we are looking at this budget through the lens of fiscal accountability and responsibility. That means staying under the self-imposed 2% spending cap, which our one-house budget resolution reflected yesterday. We also are focused on economic issues that are important to the people of the state, having job opportunities so that families can have the living that they need and young people have opportunities once they graduate from college. We're very focused on tax relief. We put forward our tax relief plan. Just this past week, we passed it yesterday, 25 by 25, to have the lowest personal income tax rate for middle-income families in 70 years. That is vitally important to people's quality of life here in New York State. We're focused on education, as the leader said, and eliminating the GEA and making sure that our schools are properly funded so that our children have the best learning opportunities. And we're focused on parity and transportation aid. And those are just a few of the things that we put forward yesterday. So I want to thank everyone who has participated so far. As Minority Leader Stuart Cousins said, the staff work extraordinarily hard. I can attest to that fact. But I also want to thank my colleagues who are here today. And we're looking to move forward on behalf of the people of New York State to get the budget done in a timely fashion and make sure that we get the people's work done. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Young.
So we're announcing that the Senate and Assembly have each executed the joint certificate beginning the conference committee process in an effort to reconcile variations in the budget proposals passed by each House.
And at this time, we're going to designate for the Senate, the recording secretary of the General Conference Committee is Rebecca Wood.
I'm also designating recording secretary of the General Conference Committee to be Brian Hack. We're also announcing each of the conference committees have appointed members to the following joint budget subcommittees. The member assignments to each such committee will be distributed by staff. They'll be made available. I'm not going to read all of them. So we can just go to
Okay. And then, just in terms of our schedule, all of you are obviously paying attention. You're here. We will meet as needed, and all of you who are conversant with Albany understand we have kind of a unique legislative calendar, the way the days fall this year. So we have a tight time frame, and I have every expectation that when we need to meet at the General Conference Committee level or at the subcommittee level, that we will do that, and everyone will be properly and timely informed.
The joint budget subcommittee schedule will, of course, be forthcoming.
Okay, so I'm calling for an adjournment of the General Conference Committee subject to the call of the co-chairs. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.